Hello and welcome to the program. I am Suren. Respect is a celebration of life. Currently, justification has truly replaced responsibility. Apologies are certainly no excuses, with expectations of being let off. The word sorry covers your responsibilities in many situations. Yet, pressing responsibility is to keep Earth in good working order. I say, now is the time to use your ability and the bonuses as a response to whatever challenges confronting you. Let us consider accountabilities. As you realize that being responsible starts at this very moment, and the need to begin with it is all about the people, and only they can do it. Let us consider that it is possible, without drugs, hypnosis, or trance states, anyone can travel in time and space. There is a difference and different understanding of the twilight zone between consciousness and memory. I was made aware of such a program in the early 1970s, and it was called the Christos Experience. Gerald Glaskin has published a sensational book about this particular issue, this intriguing subject, and a number of sincere friends showing great interest after discovering my academic background, sought my assistance to comprehend the whole issue. After obtaining the spoken of publication, I made it into a small study, despite the complete opposition of my partner and the members of the cult she chose to follow and worship. I conducted experiments and became the, shall we say, guinea pig to prove to myself whether it was going to be a viable experiment after all or not. At first I needed to discover other people's experiments and all about their experiences, where Glaskin's book became very useful. In his book, he asked questions, several of them. Have we only one life? Or do we have several? Can we cross from one incarnation to another? Any procedures given in today's episode are not for entertainment and does not need to be taken very lightly. Now here's a question, a major one. Do we have several lives? Reincarnating, traveling, and migrating from one incarnation to another, from one world into another, from one time into something else. So then, what was the Christos experience about? At first it appeared to be something to do with yet another of those philosophical issues with a few devoted followers who appeared to have many outsiders amongst them who have chosen to be fanatical, even to the extent of being a bit soft in their head. I have discovered the existence of this particular subject furnished in a number of magazines as well, and which were published in London or in Paris, and have discovered such subheadings as the preparations for the New Age, real incarnation, the 7 bodies of man, and so forth. Of course, the subjects like these and other issues like the self-discovery and meditation have interested me a lot. However, I'm not a person who would accept anything or everything suggested by some other teachers, gurus, or a group of people as being the only truth, especially immediately after making some study of it. Now, being a scientist, I tend to question everything painstakingly and prefer to give it at least 50-50 chance to be so. Or otherwise, many suggestions could not be accepted on face value. Hopefully we are in agreement in that. However, there were a number of methods to remember the past, and probably even past lives, if it happened. After reading some of the publications, I discovered that there was a method, quite simple, which did not involve any dangerous procedures, nor any hypnotism or prolonged autosuggestions. Then I have experimented and tried with several of my good friends as a group. One evening in Melbourne, in Australia, we got together with friends for the purpose of experimenting with the procedures, and which I was very familiar at the time. As I have mentioned it before, I became the guinea pig. With this experiment, the person being subjected to this experience was to undergo a few preliminary mental exercises while laying flat on his back on the floor, his eyes closed, and with a cushion supporting his head. My shoes have been removed too. The last requirement was said to be very necessary, as before anything would or could start. The person's ankles and feet must be massaged for a few minutes to loosen them, and it was very pleasant to relax one's feet. While one was having this massage, the other feet, or another was to massage gently the center of the forehead with circular motions for several minutes. This is known to induce a sense of feeling the buzzing in the head, which I did not experience at all. My mind was not able to concentrate on my feet alone or the head at the same time, simultaneously. For one could only concentrate on one thing at a time alone in the human world. In a few short minutes, I too felt a very distinct change. I could feel the conscious and unconscious sensations all at once, meaning those within and exterior to one's self. Doubtlessly, I was fully relaxed. In truth, I felt as if I was floating above my own physique. I'd like to hear your experiences, or drop a line if you desire to do these exercises. We have also discovered that people who unfortunately cannot have the Christos experience remain really deprived of the fun of it. After several attempts, people usually become remarkably proficient and quick with the experiences. When descending from considerable heights, for example, some would soon discover that they were suddenly right back on the spot where they had started their journey. However, after non-biased and open-minded instructions, one could make the person change the day into the night and back to day several times. Then have the person to become attentive again, but this time to discover that the person has found whatever he was looking for in a different place. Then, when taking this person from stretching and shrinking exercises, all of the rest of the time, instead visualizing the front door of one's apartment or a dwelling, as we had just done twice, several times before. When, however, talking to visualize themselves while in front of the door of a house, wherever it might be, when we discovered it as expected, visualization exercise from a certain height above, say a city, was a lot easier to imagine, thus making the procedure performed well. It is to make one to be able to repeat the experience, and the person would probably land on somewhere else, say a coastline on return. Probably wherever it might be. Sometimes people taken into a journey of the strange kind could not see themselves at all, but would have experienced other relevant visuals. It is certainly not like standing in the middle of the road. Yet, they couldn't see themselves for some strange reason, and couldn't see what happened to them. They would probably have more to see, for it be some other form that he or she could not really recognize. Could this person see somebody else or anything else but, one would probably hear or be awake, or perhaps see some windmill, a very old one, in a short distance. Or it might be a tree. And so, drifting eventually is a possibility, but that is a different issue. However, as soon as this person was awake and being asked to alternate after switching from one day to another, and even though he would know where the ocean, for example, was, and now discovering how to move around by himself, he would also know where to find himself, and perhaps noticing everything starting to fade away again. If this person would never accept defeat and imagine that the word uttered again one day, according to some open-minded thinking, that article could be understood as one of the prerequisites for the experiments. Sometimes subjects can hear various sounds in the room and other whisperings. In order to listen to the sounds of being recorded, for example, and the sounds of the remote traffic in the distance, whereas it does not happen as in your natural environment. We all tend just to create the imagined world, let alone the actual environmental sounds. Now, how is the procedure conducted? Well, I can tell you this: the stages for this operation. First stage: the person who is being conducted is to lay flat on his back on the floor with a cushion under his head and shoes off. His eyes need to be firmly closed. The person's ankles are then massaged for 2 or 3 minutes. Shortly after starting the massage or massaging the ankles, another person, usually the one who is conducting the session, with suggestions and questioning, massages the forehead. Second stage. Now one can begin the mental exercises to make the relaxation experiment geared to expand subject's mind beyond its normal limits in his physical body. It does not matter if the person is spiritually aware of this or not. The technique still works. Of course, as greater sense of spiritual awareness may be a plus, and there has to be a great sense of spiritual feeling around this person who has agreed, in a sense, that his ability to see and understand his expanded experience will be a good one. You might have hurt your knee or find out something of a past life experience could provide some necessary information to you, which may explain the failures of the past than a rather ordinary dreaming. He or she would then be asked to see when he or she is 2 inches taller, and the person doing the instructing waits till he does so. At this stage, with this experiment, should be encouraging to start talking as much as possible, so that the subject will become accustomed to the idea for later on, when it is necessary for him to recall and describe his experiences. Once he has stretched through the mental exercise, he then will be asked, and he must keep talking, and this should be continually encouraged, to start talking so that he would be accustomed to the idea for later. As I mentioned, when it is very realistic for him to describe these experiences. Once he has been stretched, so to say, he is going to be asked to return to his normal state of being, probably trying to see what happens. Once he has stretched 2 inches, he will be asked again to return to his normal length, or trying to see and feel his feet, returning towards him and to their normal position. Repeat this several times till he becomes accustomed to the process. Now, repeat the entire process once more through his head. Then return to the feet and have him stretch once more. Return them in a distance of 12 inches or about 20 centimeters. Repeat the same distance with his feet and afterwards with his head, and have him stretch again and repeat this almost immediately. Then repeat the procedure and again return him to his feet and have him further stretching. He is then asked to see when he is 2 inches taller. The person doing the instructing, waiting till he does so, or he has done so. At this stage, the experimentee should be encouraged to start talking more, as much as possible, so that he will become accustomed to the idea for later on, when it is important for him to describe his experiences. Once he has stretched 2 inches, he's been asked again to return to his normal legs, or else trying to see or feel his feet returning to their normal position. Once again, repeat this several times until he becomes accustomed to the process, always waiting for each stretch and returning to normal be accomplished. Now, repeat the entire process, but this time through the head. Then return to the feet and have him stretch and return them a distance of 12 inches. That is about 20 centimeters. Repeat the same distance through his head. Again, return him to his feet and have him stretch by 24 inches or about 40 centimeters. The instructor can tell if the person is having difficulty with this 24-inch or 40 centimeters stretch, as it should be accomplished in under a minute. Have the experiment repeated till he does so. Do not have him return from this longest stretch now, but have him stretched the same distance, 24 inches or 40 centimeters, through the head. Do not have him return from this longest stretch, but have him stretched the same distance, that is 24 inches or 40 centimeters, through the head. If he says he finds his feet are withdrawing as he stretches through his head, well, have patience and persevere until he has accomplished the stretching in both directions. When stretched 4 feet or 80 centimeters, ask him next to expand all over, to feel himself growing in all directions, rather like an enormous balloon. This will expand him out of himself. The next step is to start him seeing things, familiar things. So it is now to picture himself, as he normally is, but standing outside his own front door. Ask him to look at his own front door and let him describe it to you in full. Ask him as many questions as you can about it until he has fully described the door. And it is in the midst of certain surroundings, including what he is standing on and what is above him when he looks up. Once he has managed to look at his front door with what is called expanded consciousness, he must then become truly accustomed to a feeling of free movement while obtaining a much wider range of vision or visualization. As you know, ask him to imagine he is standing on the top of his roof and able to describe what his garden or immediate surroundings look like from that height. Keep on asking for as many details as this makes him accustomed to seeing without the use of his actual eyes. Now ask him to go straight up in the air, about, say, 500 yards, or even 500 meters will do just as well. And to keep talking as he looks down, describing all he can now see from this greatly increased distance. If you should look at the height, remind him that he is still actually on the floor and he is only visualizing and being at that same age. Now ask him to turn slowly in a complete circle and describe everything he sees, to have him accustomed to seeing his environment from an unnatural viewpoint. Once this is done, ask what time of the day it is while he is seeing what it is. Usually it is daytime, but it can be at various other times and with very different weather patterns as well. Yet, knowing the time precisely and the weather might be related to actual conditions, that would be a plus. Now, if he is able to see himself during the day, ask him to change the scene to night, nighttime that is, and to describe all he sees as it now is. Then ask him to change back to daytime and to compare the scene with how it was at nighttime and the daytime. It does not matter if they differ, but they usually remain the same. Next, give him assurance of safety for the remainder of this experiment. Ask who is changing the time from day to night and back to day again. Most will say, I am, or I am, but at your suggestion. It is very important that he realizes that he himself has the control over whatever he is seeing. Here comes the fourth stage. If you are satisfied that the person is content in his newly expanded environment, you now carefully guide him to the rest of the experience and possibly to a past life. Tell him, rather than just asking him, to keep picturing bright sunshine so that he can see clearly where he lands feet first. Well, looking down, he should be able to see his feet. So you can have him comment, listening, or even recording his description of whatever. He will find himself by describing his feet. If they are somewhat different, or what he is wearing on them, often shoes, though, of course, in reality, he is wearing only his socks or is barefooted from the preliminary massaging. Go on from the feet to ask him what kind of ground he is standing on. Then ask him to look around him a little while. If he is in, say, a courtyard, ask what kind of buildings, etc., are all around him. Are there other people there? Or is he alone? Can he see what else he is wearing? Can he see his hands and what is on them? Can he see his own face, his features, his fingers as a whole? Does he feel this in his dream? Most subjects can go outside their bodies and look at them objectively. Is he standing still or walking? Keep pressing for details until he is firmly locked in on whatever environment he is now in. If in a marketplace, can he see a fruit stall, perhaps? What kind of fruits are on it? How much fruit? Keep questioning him till he either is tired of it or else he sees clearly and sharply and in vivid colors, if he is not already doing so. Watch the eyelids for rapid eye movements. The faster the rate of the flicker, the more successful is the vision or the dream. And from now on, you must literally play it by ear. Try not to ask suggestible questions, but merely ask what he is seeing or doing. Then follow up with relevant questions, such as the color, what do you feel, how old is he, what is he wearing, do they speak to you, in what language, or do you just understand? Trying to have a recorder going from when he lands so that further details can be asked about the experience after it is over. After a while, usually about 3/4 of an hour, you may say, yes, all he wants to, or if he has become quiet, you must ask him if he has seen all that he wants to. If he says yes, you can then ask him if he wants to go on to the experience of death or return directly to everyday life. He is not in a trance. What is absolutely conscious to choose what he likes. It is merely a matter of relocation, his consciousness to return to the present. He should, at any time, if asked, be able to identify the sounds around him in the present, while still seeing his past life or experience. Remember, he himself is able to return or stop the experience at any time he wishes. However, as in a natural dream, an experimenter is usually does not wish to terminate it until it has become to a logical conclusion. And even then, he is sometimes quite reluctant to return to the humdrum reality of the present, compared with what he has just been experiencing, unless he is impatient to talk about it. Keep on the count of the time taken. Usually, the preliminary procedure takes about 20 minutes, while the experience itself takes anything from half an hour to over an hour. As with an ordinary dream, so that the entire process should take an hour or little more. Usually the experimentee will think he has been away for only a quarter of the time and will be astonished at just how long the experience lasted. Now it is time to return to our natural environment. We will meet again here by the next time, next episode. Until then, keep smiling and be happy. Thank you.